Hey everyone, Danny Shamus here, and today I'm coming to you from my home studio. I'm just sitting down to record a session acoustic track of one of my original songs, and I thought it would be a really good idea to put together a short video for you with my friends over at Royer, just about tracking an acoustic guitar from a home studio setting and really dialing in a great sound. Now today I've got a super simple setup. I've got the Royer R10 ribbon mic capturing the sound of the guitar. I've got a SM7B for my vocals. I'm playing my Taylor 514 CE, and I'm also taking a direct line out of the guitar as well. Now, before I get into any of the details, the first thing that I'm thinking about is always the acoustics of the room that I'm planning to record in. Now, recording at home is actually quite challenging simply because you're going to get a lot of bleed and a lot of reverberation off of the walls, the doors, and the windows. So to combat this, I've actually put up a lot of acoustic paneling throughout my studio, which will make the biggest difference on keeping my tracks sounding as clean as possible. Now, next up, it's so important to have a really clear picture in your mind of the sound that you're planning to capture before you start recording. So for example, is it a really aggressive strummed rhythm part, or is it a really soft, mellow fingerstyle part? Is the acoustic guitar going to be the main focus point of your song, or is it just going to be supplementary? What about where the guitar will sit in the mix? Do you want a really wide sounding guitar, or do you think you want a really focused and centered sounding track? So these are all things that I'm thinking about before I set up any mics and before I get into recording. Now I do own quite a few different guitars, all of which have a different palette of sounds that I can draw from depending on the overall sound that I'm aiming for. So for example, this Taylor is the guitar that I'll tend to lean towards if I'm looking for that sort of rhythm strummed part. Whereas if I'm aiming more towards a fingerstyle or more of a mellow track, I might be inclined to grab a different guitar. Now, most of my acoustics are fit with LR Baggs pickups, all of which have condenser mics built into them. Now, the pickups do tend to sound quite nice and quite natural by themselves. However, the real magic is happening when you blend the signal from the R10 or even a stereo pair of R10s in with the direct line as well. In terms of microphones, the R10 by Royer has been a huge game changer for me. You really get this deep, rich warmth on the bottom end, but it's also matched perfectly with these really silky smooth highs that never sound harsh or brittle like you'll often find with some condenser mics. Now, I've come to find that there's a certain woody or vintage sound that you can only really get from a ribbon mic, so they've quickly become my go-to mics, especially when I'm recording any of my acoustic instruments. Now, generally speaking, most ribbon mics do actually have quite a significant proximity effect. So what this means is that the closer you get into the microphone, the more enhanced the bass will sound in your recordings. Now, what's really cool about the R10 is Royer have designed a 3-layer windscreen that not only helps to protect the ribbon element from damage, but it also reduces wind noise and plosives quite significantly. Now, one of the spin-offs of this is you can actually get in really nice and close to this microphone without getting a lot of that overwhelming proximity effect. So that means when it comes to recording guitar amps or even tracking acoustic instruments like we're doing today, you can really get in nice and close without that overwhelming proximity effect taking over. Now, the other thing I've noticed is the R10s tend to handle EQ exceptionally well. So when it does come time to making some slight changes here and there, everything's going to sound very natural and very well balanced. Now, in terms of my signal path, I'm running a single R10 today, running directly into a Neve 1073 SPX. Now, this Taylor is naturally quite a bright sounding guitar, so a slight cut at 3.2K will just help to reduce some of those mids that can lead this guitar to sounding a little bit shrill. I'll also usually set a high pass filter somewhere between 50 and 80 cycles just to help reduce some of that low end rumble that you'll get, but also just to help clean up the track on the way in. Next up, I'll be taking a direct line from my guitar and running it into an LR Baggs Para Acoustic DI. Now I've dialed in just a slight bit of EQ just to taste. So overall for this session, I'm going to be recording 3 tracks. I've got my vocal mic, I've got my R10, which is capturing the natural sound of the guitar, but also a bit of the room as well. And then I've also got a direct line out of my guitar. Now here's another really cool trick that I've picked up along the way. You can take that direct line and you can pass it through a plugin such as Stereo Maker by Plugin Alliance. So essentially what this plugin will do is take that mono signal and it will split it into a stereo signal, but it will do it in a really natural and a really musical way. So the bulk of your acoustic sound is going to be captured from the R10, but by blending in that now stereo direct line underneath, it'll help to add a bit of width. So the focus will still be from the R10, but you're just getting a bit more spread from the direct line. So when I'm miking with a single R10 like I am today, I usually aim the center of the ribbon somewhere near the 12th fret, and I like to keep the mic somewhere between a foot to a foot and a half away from the instrument. Now that's usually my starting point where everything roughly sounds usually pretty good. Now, because ribbon mics capture in a figure 8 polar pattern, it's important to be conscious of the room sound that you're hearing when you're recording with this mic. So the closer in you are to the mic, the more pronounced the acoustic will sound in your recording, and the less you're going to get in regards to the ambience of the room. Now, the opposite is also true. The further back you come from this mic, the more the ambience of the room will be captured in your recording. Now this is where it's going to come to personal preference for you depending on the sound that you're after. So now that your mic is positioned sort of roughly where you want it, put some headphones on and just move around the mic just a little bit while playing, just to really dial in that sweet spot where everything comes together naturally. Now on this particular Taylor, I find the sweet spot to be somewhere around where the neck joins the body of the guitar. So a little bit closer to the sound hole, but not so close that the recording's going to sound really boomy or boxy. So in a situation like this, where I'm singing and playing guitar at the same time, it's inevitable that I'm going to be getting some bleed between the microphones. So some of my voice will be captured by the R10, and also some of my acoustic will be picked up by my vocal mic. So it's important at this stage to try to be conscious and try to reduce this bleed as much as possible. Be sure to move things around, experiment a little bit, just to dial in where everything starts to blend and come together quite naturally. Alright, so my mics are set up, I found the sweet spot on this guitar, and I've also set the mics up in a way that I'm reducing the bleed as much as possible. So at this point, everything's sounding good, and I'm pretty well ready to start recording. Now here's a clip from the final product I put together, and you'll notice I ended up using a different vocal mic for the actual recording. Now I switched over to a Neumann KMS 104 condenser mic, simply because I was finding I was getting a bit more clarity out of my voice, and I was surprised by this, but I was actually getting a little bit less bleed than I was with the SM7B. So this is where trial and error really plays a huge role in figuring out what's going to sound best. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you were able to pull something out of this video that helps you with your own home studio recording. We'll see you in the next video. Make me call it stone. Feel the
distance here is spoken, and the many miles they break us down. The road that spans between us, it's the only road we've ever found. Finally face your freedoms, you finally face your fears. You say we learn from our decisions that we make throughout the years. The time will come, the time will go, and steer me my direction, make me cold as stone, dry your eyes, and then you'll see the time rolls on and on and on, but it's short and sweet. But it's short and sweet. In this maze that runs before you, you're always looking for your way out. As these walls closing around you, I wonder if there were walls you'd live without. You finally face your freedoms, you finally dry your tears. You say we learn from our decisions, but I see you running from your fears. And time will come, time will go, and steer me my direction, make me cold as stone, dry your eyes, and then you'll see the time goes on and on and on, but it's short and sweet. I said it's short and sweet. Short and sweet. It's short and sweet.